The book Despot's Accomplice by Brian Klaas is one of my all-time favorites because it was one of those books where every page is packed with clear and concrete examples. I took a long time to read it because I would store the most interesting case studies on my Evernote document. If you want one example where I dedicated nearly an entire speech to just using my specialized matter from this book, then look no further than the Australs 2022 semifinal DPM speech that I gave. The motion was that Western states should support local rebel groups as opposed to direct military intervention in other states. So far, at this point, our Prime Minister just finished arguing about the general argument that military intervention is more devastating and more likely to cause collateral damage, whilst picking local rebel groups strategically is a more reliable and sustainable strategy to minimize that damage. LO, who was David, just finished giving an excellent argument on why, even if this was the case, ending interventions more quickly is good and more likely, whilst propping up local rebel groups would inevitably lead to prolonged struggles for power that the West can no longer control. So it's more reliable as well to focus on a direct military intervention. My goal for this particular speech was to introduce an entire new dimension to the debate using the case study of Afghanistan. I had one argument only in this speech, which was to demonstrate that authoritarian rebel governments in the post-conflict, which is our presumed worst case, are better than weak and fragile democracies that are led by US military forces, which is the ideal case for opposition. My intent was to undermine LO's argument by forcing them to come to terms with the fact that even if the US military pulls out, the overdependence that they usher into the US military with the transition to democracy creates devastating power vacuums that make other rebel groups take control, which is exactly what happened with the Taliban in Afghanistan when they took over in the past year. Fortunately, this argument of counterfeit democracy was well documented in the Klaas book through the failed power sharing agreement in Afghanistan or the forced overhaul of the Ba'ath Party and the military in Iraq, both of which were facilitated by the US military at the expense of existing cronies that would still want to take power again. I even referenced the case of Rwanda under Paul Kagame as an example of an incredibly quick post-conflict recovery facilitated by propped-up rebel groups, even if it necessitated an authoritarian government. I'd encourage you to check out the speech, specifically from the portion of 2652 onwards, and the link you can find it in the description down below. If you are interested in checking out other books from Brian Klaas, I'm currently reading his other book called Corruptible, which documents his interviews with various rebels and dictators that benefited directly from Western support. And he also has an excellent repository of an entertaining and excellent and compelling political commentaries on his podcast called Power Corrupts, which I used to listen to all the time back in college. I think the bottom line for this video is pretty simple. Whenever you take an example or use it in a debate, it's important to connect it to your argument and also demonstrate it using the example in the most vivid and clearest way possible, which I think I was pretty successful in doing in this speech. Alright, that's it for today's video. Thank you everyone and have a great day.